The land of the Lotha people stretched across rolling hills, thick forests, and rivers that glistened like silver under the moonlight. In the heart of this land stood a village, its people bound by tradition and folklore, their lives woven with the unseen forces of nature. Among them lived Lijao, a woman whose beauty was whispered about beyond the village borders, her name carried by the wind to distant lands. Some claimed her radiance was a gift from the spirits. Others believed she had discovered a secret elixir hidden deep in the mountains. Yet, when asked, she only smiled, never revealing the truth. Lijao was unlike anyone else. Her hair cascaded down her back like the flowing rivers after the monsoon, dark and endless, catching the sunlight in glimmers of gold. Her eyes, deep as the ancient forests, held secrets older than time, and her skin seemed to glow with a warmth that made those around her feel at peace. But it was not merely her appearance that captivated people. There was something about her presence, calm yet commanding, gentle yet unbreakable. She moved with grace, her words carrying wisdom that made even the elders listen. Despite the many suitors who sought her hand, Lijao chose a life of quiet solitude. The village women observed her closely, hoping to uncover the secret behind her beauty, watching as she bathed in the morning mist, tended to the wildflowers, and walked barefoot upon the dewdrop-covered grass. Some believed she spoke to the earth itself, whispering to the roots and leaves, seeking counsel from forces unseen. In time, Lijao bore 3 daughters, each as breathtaking as the dawn breaking over the hills. The first, named Larini, had eyes that mirrored the sky before a storm, piercing and full of mystery. Her gaze could silence a room, drawing people into her world of unspoken depth. The second, Monbini, possessed skin so luminous it seemed to hold the glow of the moon, an ethereal light that never faded, even in the darkest corners of the forest. And the youngest, Ezani, had hair unlike any other, strands woven with the essence of nature itself, shifting from dusk's auburn to the deep black of midnight. As the daughters grew, the village watched them with awe and curiosity. The beauty they carried was unlike anything seen before, each of them possessing something almost otherworldly. Yet, beyond their appearance, they inherited their mother's quiet strength, her kindness, and the air of mystery that made people wonder whether they truly belonged to this world or had been touched by the spirits. But admiration often walks hand in hand with envy. The village women, unable to ignore the growing attention upon Lijao and her daughters, began whispering. What was the secret? How could one family alone be blessed with such impossible beauty? Some believed they bathed in enchanted springs hidden beyond the mountains. Others insisted they ate fruits unknown to ordinary people, gifts from unseen spirits. A few even murmured that they were not entirely human, but creatures of magic who had taken human form. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, an elder woman approached Lijao. The village had spoken, she said. They wanted to know the truth. Was it the water she drank? The air she breathed? Was there a hidden place where beauty was harvested like ripe grain? Lijao listened, her expression unreadable. The women gathered around, leaning in, waiting. At last, she spoke, her voice as soft as the wind through the trees. There is no secret, she said. Beauty is not found in rivers or mountains, nor stolen from the spirits of the land. It is carried in the way we walk, the kindness we offer, the love we give and receive. It is not in what is seen, but in what is felt. A murmur passed through the women. Some scoffed, disappointed by the answer. Others frowned, unwilling to believe that something so extraordinary could be so simple. But as the years passed, the truth of Lijao's words began to show. Though her daughters remained admired, it was their spirit, their grace, and their wisdom that left the deepest impression. Larini, with her sharp gaze, saw through lies and brought justice to those wronged. Monbini, radiant as the moon, used her light to heal, offering comfort to the weary. Ezani, wild as the wind, walked fearlessly into the unknown, forging her own path beyond what tradition dictated. And so, while the village continued to search for answers, Lijao and her daughters lived as they always had, without seeking to be admired, without the need to explain their existence. They moved through the world like whispers in the wind, leaving behind something greater than beauty. They left a legacy. As Lijao's daughters blossomed into womanhood, their beauty became both a blessing and a burden. Whispers of their radiance spread beyond the village, reaching the ears of warriors, chieftains, and merchants from distant lands. Men arrived bearing gifts, woven silks, golden trinkets, rare gemstones, each seeking the favor of one of the three sisters. The elders, eyes gleaming with ambition, believed that marrying the daughters to powerful men would bring prosperity to the village. Yet, Lijao watched in silence, knowing that true happiness could not be bartered like grain in the marketplace. Larini, the eldest, met the eyes of each suitor with quiet intensity, her gaze revealing a mind that saw beyond wealth and status. Among those who came was a warrior draped in tiger pelts, his voice as steady as the earth beneath his feet. He spoke of conquest, of lands he would claim in her name, of a life where she would be revered as a queen. But his words rang hollow in her ears. Power did not move her. Strength, she knew, was not measured by battles fought, but by the weight of one's word. One evening, as the village prepared for a festival, Larini wandered to the river's edge, seeking refuge from the growing pressure of expectation. There, she heard the faint sound of a flute, a melody woven with longing and tenderness. Following the tune, she found a man sitting beneath the old banyan tree, his fingers dancing over the instrument. His clothes were simple, his presence unassuming, but his music stirred something deep within her. "You play as if the wind itself listens," she said. He looked up, startled, then smiled. "And you listen as if you understand its sorrow." His name was Chanbin, a wandering musician who carried nothing but his flute and the stories he collected on his travels. Unlike the men who sought to claim her, he did not speak of what he could give her, but of what he had seen. Forests where the trees whispered secrets, rivers that remembered the laughter of those who once bathed in them, mountains that stood as silent witnesses to time itself. In his presence, Larini felt something she had never known before. She felt seen. But the village elders were displeased. A musician, a man with no land, no wealth, no status. How could such a person be worthy of her? They warned Larini of hardship, of a life spent in wandering, of nights where hunger might outweigh love. Yet she stood firm. "A heart that sings is richer than one weighed down by gold," she told them. And so, against all expectations, she chose love over tradition, stepping into a future as uncertain as it was free. Monbini, the second daughter, had never been drawn to the grandeur of suitors, though they came in numbers, dazzled by the glow of her presence. Among them was a merchant who spoke of his ships, of the treasures they carried from distant lands. He promised her a life of luxury, perfumes from the south, fabrics woven with gold, a home where she would never know want. The village approved. Such a marriage would bring prosperity, they said. Yet, Monbini hesitated. Wealth, she knew, had little meaning in a world where kindness was rare. She had seen how those who had everything still longed for more, while those with nothing shared the little they possessed. Her heart found its answer in an unexpected place. One evening, she came across a boy struggling to carry firewood up the hill. He was no one of importance, merely a weaver's son, his hands rough from work, his clothes patched at the elbows. Yet, when she reached out to help him, he smiled as if she had given him the world. "You should not carry burdens alone," she said. "Then perhaps," he replied, "we can share them." She learned his name was Kijong, and in time, she saw in him a wealth no merchant could offer. He gave without expecting, found joy in the simplest things, and carried a heart untainted by greed. When she chose him over the riches promised by the merchant, the village scoffed. "Love does not fill empty bellies," they warned. But Monbini only smiled. And yet, without love, all riches taste of dust. Ezani, the youngest, had never wished to be defined by her beauty. She was the wild one, her spirit restless as the river in flood. While others dreamed of love, she longed for the unknown, for paths untraveled, for the story she had yet to live. She did not wait for suitors to come to her. She left before they had the chance. She journeyed beyond the village, into forests where the trees stood taller than temples, where the air carried the scent of the earth after rain. She walked where no path had been carved, met people whose tongues spoke languages unfamiliar to her ears. And in her wandering, she crossed paths with a warrior who carried no banner, no title, only the scars of battles fought and the quiet strength of a man who had lost much yet remained unbroken. They met as equals, neither seeking to claim the other, neither willing to surrender their own freedom. Their love was not spoken, but understood, not bound by promises, but by shared silence beneath starlit skies. When Ezani returned to the village, her heart carried no doubts. She would not be caged by expectations, nor would she let others dictate the course of her life. "I'm not meant to be kept," she said simply. And with that, she left once more, her footsteps light, her future bound only by the horizon. The village, divided in thought, watched as the daughters of Lijao shaped their own fates. Some whispered disapproval, lamenting the opportunities lost, the traditions broken. Yet others, especially the young girls who had been raised to believe their futures were not theirs to choose, saw something else. They saw possibility. They saw courage. And so, while the elders spoke of what could have been, a new generation listened to what was, their hearts stirred by the tale of three women who had chosen love not as it was dictated, but as it was meant to be. The village had changed, though few dared to admit it. The choices of Lijao's daughters had left ripples in the hearts of those who had watched them walk their own paths. Where once the elders spoke with certainty about a woman's duty, now their words carried hesitation, as if they questioned their own wisdom. Where once young girls were told that their worth lay in the admiration of men, now they whispered among themselves, daring to dream of something more. Lijao, ever silent, ever watchful, saw the shift not in grand declarations, but in small, fleeting moments. A girl refusing to lower her gaze when addressed by an elder, a mother letting her daughter run free in the fields instead of keeping her by the hearth, a father listening when his child spoke of a future that did not align with tradition. Change did not come as a storm, but as the quiet persistence of water carving through stone. Then, one summer, a great storm came, not of voices and defiance, but of wind and rain. The skies darkened without warning, and the river, swollen with the fury of the heavens, rose beyond its banks. The village, caught unprepared, watched in horror as their fields drowned. Their homes trembled beneath the weight of the storm, and their livestock scattered into the night. Panic seized them, for nature was merciless, and they were at its mercy. It was then that Larini stood before the elders, her voice unwavering. "The river will not stop," she said, "but we can guide it." They hesitated. She was young, a woman, and yet, in that moment, she carried the presence of one who had seen beyond fear. The warrior in her had not been shaped by battle, but by understanding, by seeing the world as it was, not as they wished it to be. She led the men to where the land dipped, where they could carve a new path for the water to flow. And as they worked, as they struggled against the storm, they found themselves following not the commands of their elders, but the guidance of a woman they had once deemed unfit to lead. Monbini, too, was among them, not lifting stones, but moving among the frightened children, the weeping mothers, the men who had lost hope. Her presence was light in the darkness, her hands steady as she bound wounds, her voice gentle as she reassured those who thought all was lost. The glow she carried was not merely of the skin but of the spirit, illuminating the places untouched by fire or sun. And when the storm finally passed, when the village stood battered but not broken, it was Monbini's words that held them together. "We have lost," she said, "but not everything. And so long as we have each other, we will never be without. Azani returned when the storm had gone, her journeys having taken her beyond the hills where no village stood. She had walked through lands where the soil was red and the trees bent in ways she had never seen. She had learned the ways of those who lived not in homes but beneath the open sky, who spoke not of land to be owned but of paths to be followed. She had seen a world far larger than the one she had left. Yet it was here, in the village of her birth, that she felt her presence was needed. She did not ask for permission to help rebuild. She simply did. She lifted wood, wove new roofs, planted seeds in the fields where crops had been washed away. And the people, watching her, realized that a woman who sought the world did not do so to abandon those she loved, but to return with more than she had left with. Lijao, standing at the threshold of her home, saw her daughters not as they had been, but as they had become. They had left, each in their own way, and yet they had returned, not to seek approval, but to give, to offer their wisdom, their strength, their light. It was then that the village truly understood. Beauty had never been in the skin, nor in the symmetry of one's face. It had never been in the way hair caught the sun or in the way eyes shimmered under moonlight. Beauty was in the hands that built, in the voices that soothed, in the feet that walked toward purpose rather than away from hardship. It was not found in the admiration of others, but in the way one shaped the world around them. The daughters of Lijao were beautiful, not because they had been born so, but because they had chosen to be. The village no longer spoke of them as mere women of exceptional beauty. Their names were etched into stories told by firelight, not as daughters of Lijao, but as women who had carved their own place in the world. The young girls listened, their eyes wide, their hearts beating with a longing they had not known they could have. Lijao, knowing that her work was done, stepped back into the quiet she had always known. She did not need to say more. The world had already begun to listen.